Hello and welcome back to I Made This. My name is Ollie and today we're going to be going behind the scenes of my latest Claymation music video for the Psychedelic Porn Crumpets March On Pax Romana. So as of the date of this video, I've been working for the Porn Crumpets for around 6 years now, since 2019, and I've done around 9 videos I think to date. And it all started off with a video for Keen for Kick-Ons, which was kind of like a hodgepodge of all the different styles of animation I do. So 2D animation, claymation, cutouts and puppets. And then we followed that up with a live action fantasy video for Bill's Mandolin, where I utilised a lot of green screen and there's still animated elements involved. And then the follow-up video for that was Him for a Droid, which was actually a performance video of the band, but we incorporated animation over the top and some funky edits and things like that. Then COVID hit, so you weren't able to film the band live or film actors or actresses in a narrative kind of sense. And so I was tasked with doing a claymation music video, and that was for Mr. Prism. And what was initially one video, it kind of turned into 3 videos, and those 3 videos told an entire story. And that was about Alice in Wonderland, who visits this town called Sweetsville, and she goes on this massive murderous rampage. And then the second video, Tally Ho, tells the story of T-Bone McLaser Blast, an alien bounty hunter. And then the third video, we bring them all together and it's about T-Bone McLaser Blast versus Alice in Wonderland. It's a very odd trilogy, but check it out, I'm super proud of it. And then a year later I was tasked with doing the video for Acid Dent, and this was a little bit different. I kind of stripped the fantasy and the sci-fi elements and kind of went for a more kitchen sink, but still in the horror genre. And it's about a guy that anything he touches turns to acid. And in typical me fashion, it ends up in lots of blood and guts. And then a year after that, I did the video for Pillhouse Popper Moonshine. And for that, we kind of went back to the kind of sci-fi of Tally Ho, but it was less goofy. Even though it had a duck character in it, we kind of told a more serious story and leaning into the kind of sci-fi horror of Alien and The Thing, and it's about this alien that takes over a ship, and there's a little bit more emotion and things like that going on in it. And then recently Jack sent me the latest single for Pax Romana, or March On for Pax Romana, and I was blown away by this track. I'm not even joking. This track was phenomenal. I mean, I've always enjoyed every track that they've sent me, and in my opinion progressively gotten better, but this song, just next level. A lot of the bands in their ilk have kind of started to tone down their heaviness, I guess, whereas the Porn Crumpets have just ratcheted it up, and now they're like a full-on metal band now almost, and I'm here for it because that's my bread and butter. And I was super keen to make a video for this, and I thought, you know what, with the sound of this video so heavy and raw, let's do like a nightclub bar, like a biker bar, and let's bring back T-Bone McLaser Blast, because he's always been living in my mind since doing those videos. Even though I killed him off, I want to tell more stories with him, and I thought this is the perfect opportunity. And the last video was so much work that it kind of scared me off a little bit from doing something so big again, so I thought for this one, let's just tone it down, let's build one set, just a couple of characters, and just keep it super simple. But you know me, that's not going to happen, so without further ado, let's see how I got on.
So, as with all my music videos, the first thing I start on after coming up with the initial idea is the storyboard. This is so important because it lets everybody who's involved with the video, be it the band or the management, know exactly what's going to happen. So if there's any objections, you've nipped it in the bud before you've even started animating. So here you can see I very roughly sketch out my pages before I start to refine them. I have left them like this before in the past, and sometimes I've come back a couple of days later and I literally have no idea what I've drawn because it's just a bunch of scribbles. So I do refine them to a certain extent. I mean, they're nothing amazing, but they get the job done. A page will take me anywhere between 20 minutes to an hour, depending on the complexity of the story that I'm trying to tell. Time is your enemy on these things, and the time it takes just to think about what you're going to do. You haven't even produced anything, put pen to paper, or just thinking about things can take up a lot of time. I'll then put the storyboard into Premiere and I'll start sculpt the story using the images that I've made. And this is really helpful for animation as well, because it will give me my timings so that I don't under animate and I don't over animate. So yeah, let's have a look at the scene in question next to the animatic. So now that the animatic is done, and before I can start building all my sets and props and characters, I need to go shopping and I need to get some of my essentials to get me started. Now Hobbycraft isn't the cheapest place to get all your crafting bits and bobs, but it's the only place local to me. So I just, as I said, get the essentials and I'll get the rest online. But from Hobbycraft I tend to get foam board, paint, craft knives, beads, things like that. So here's my haul. As you can see, I also got some laminate flooring and some caulking from Poundland and some Mod Podge. You've got to have Mod Podge. Mod Podge is essential. So now we've bought all that guff, it's now time to make some of the props and the sets. And the first thing I tasked myself making was the actual bar itself. But I kind of winged it, I didn't design it, I just kind of came up with it on the fly. Just made it with some foam board and hot glue. And thankfully, it was just about the right scale for my stop motion puppets. I also built a fridge with a door that could open up and could also be backlit as well. And I also did a door on the side, which I was going to utilise in the fight and have someone's head caved in with it, but I didn't get around to it. Here's a look at some of the detail that I put onto it, you know, some of that cassette futurism mixed with like a traditional bar. And here's the final bar itself, and I'm actually really pleased with how it looks. So I probably actually filmed way too much footage of me making these bar stools, but they were really fun to make. I made about 13 in total. And they were just made from little round circles of foam board and of course my favourite material, the inside of a dog poo bag. They are awesome, honestly, they're so versatile. And I just glue them all together, paint them up brown and then start adding detail with like a paint pen and felt tips. And then once you've done all that, kind of cover it with a bit of shoe polish to kind of give it a bit of a wooden shine to it. And I think, yeah, they look pretty cool. And then I used some more foam board and some pleather to make the cushion. I also made some tables using very similar methods with foam board and brown paint, paint pens and felt tips, and some cardboard rolls. I also made these taller stools that can go around the bar itself. These little chairs I was really pleased with. It took me about an hour to make each one, and they're just made out of foam board and pleather. And then, much like the bar, I made a desk that's in that kind of realm of cassette futurism meets real world look. So for the snooker table itself, I thought it'd be really cool if it had like a clear neon green perspex screen as opposed to, you know, a typical felt based top, just so I could like put light underneath it and kind of just, you know, really kind of make a feature out of it. But I just had an absolute nightmare cutting this perspex. It was a lot thicker than I actually anticipated, and trying to actually cut the holes itself was just an absolute nightmare. And as you can see, I just started to crack it. That was a lovely £15 well spent or wasted. So yeah, I just opted for a traditional felt based top for the snooker table, and I think it looks really cool actually. And yeah, much like the bar itself, I kind of adorned it with kind of cassette futurism, dots and doodads and panels and things like that. And there you go, you can see all the detail that I put all around it. And for time reasons, I just painted it black and then just kind of dry brushed it with a bit of silver, just to make it look a little bit used and worn. So here is the finished table. As you can see, this is from after I've actually finished the video because it's covered in blood and stuff like that. But hopefully you can see the dry brushing and the detail, like the decals that I put on it. And as you can see, it actually works. All the holes will actually lead into that little gullyway, which I don't utilise in the video whatsoever. So it was an absolute waste of time, but it was fun to make. So making this one-arm bandit slot machine was really rewarding because I literally had no idea if I was going to be able to pull this off because they're quite complex shapes. The actual mechanism itself is pretty easy. It's just cardboard tubes that are slotted on top of each other that can rotate. But like, as I said, the shape is very complex and typical me, I don't design things, I kind of just make them off the cuff and just hope that they all fit in scale to all my armatures and things like that. But yeah, I had a lot of fun making all the decals, called it space slots, and I made custom artwork for the rollers and made it so it could be backlit so that it feels like something that was actually in a bar that would have noises and sounds and lights coming from it. But yeah, the idea was to not make it look too pretty and make it look a little bit, you know, worse for wear. So I'm still pretty new to 3D printing. Not very good at it, to be honest. I still haven't, you know, figured out all the kinks and things like that. But it's something that I do want to get more involved in the future and eventually start sculpting my own weapons and things like that. But I just found a pack on Etsy of different kind of sci-fi weapons and just selected a few of those, printed them out and painted them up. And as you can see, they look pretty cool actually. And yeah, the little holsters slot inside the guns, so you can have the characters pull the guns in and out. It's very satisfying, actually. And I actually figured out I could mix some of my own pigments in with the clear resins that I bought and made my own beer bottles. I made green and brown and then made some decals that I painstakingly cut off and then glue on using sticker paper. I also printed out a bunch of pint glasses. These were really fun to dot around the set and fill with liquid and make it, you know, feel like it's actually a pub. But the less said about these ones, the better. So now it's time to make the actual interior of the set, the actual four walls that all these props and sets will kind of live within. This ended up being the biggest set I've ever made by about 4 times. Bigger than anything from Pill House or any of the videos that I've made. Me being me, I made it a bit more difficult on myself because I made the edges rounded. Normally I make my sets quite modular, so that means they're usually pretty square, but that's also so that I can store them quite easily and they're kind of tidy. And I can also put them together in any way that I need to that works for the scene that I'm making. Whereas the way I'm making it this way, by doing it round, they're kind of a lot more big, a lot more cumbersome, a lot harder to store. And it also means that they kind of have to be a specific way when I'm putting it together. And as you can see for the flooring, I just used a cheap laminate that I got from Poundland. And again, like the bar that I made and the desk, I really wanted to push that kind of cassette futurism, but mixed with like a real world bar. So I cut in lots of holes and then created lots of lines with straws and created lots of little open areas that I can put lights behind. I then sprayed it olive green and then utilising a more muted kind of cream, I sprayed from the top down. It kind of just creates interesting highlights within the paint. And I didn't do it perfectly, I did it quite sloppily, so there was lots of like gloopy bits, and I did that on purpose, I promise you, I'm not lying, I swear. I also made a dartboard, and this dartboard is probably one of my favourite things I made. I was so pleased with how that turned out. The name Nick there is in reference to one of my good friends, Nick Pearson, who always carries a set of darts around with him. So here is everything that I made for the bar. Quite a lot of stuff, as you can see. And now I'm going to put it all together and see if it actually looks halfway decent. And you know what? I'm actually really thrilled with how this looks. I think it actually looks better than I actually thought it would. It's probably a little bit underscaled, but the way I'm going to film it, I'll make it look bigger by just spacing things out for various shots. So you'll never completely see it like this. As you can see, I also made a staircase, and some podiums and a stage for a band and some dancing girls. And utilising the tops of these drink containers, I made some little lampshades to go above the pool area These levers for the bar taps actually go up and down, and I also made an area above the bar to hang some pint glasses from. These lights are the kind of lights that I'm going to put behind the walls to kind of, again, up that ambient lighting with inside the bar itself, and I can change what colour that I want them to be depending the mood of the scene and what's going on in the specific shots. For the doors themselves, I made several versions of the door so that it looks like they slide back and forth when they're animated. As you can see, I just take one out, put another one in, take a picture, take it out, put another one in, take another picture, and so on and so on. To the side of the door, you'll see where it says push. I'm going to put some visual elements over there, so it's kind of like a hand activated button that will kind of look a little bit digital and change colour when it's pressed. Now, I don't like to praise myself too much, but I'm super thrilled with this set. I think it's one of the best sets I've ever made. So I spent way too long on this toilet set, considering how little it is actually in the video. And it actually probably turned out to be one of the best sets I've made, ironically. But originally it was going to feature in the video a whole lot more. Originally in the video it was going to be much more of a bar brawl with T-Bone fighting various characters, and then that would lead to him interacting with other characters and it would break out with other fights. So eventually everyone in the bar would be fighting each other essentially. But due to time within the video and time that I had to produce it, I just kind of had to rework my ending to make it fit the amount of time I had in the video and the time I had left to produce it. But as you can see, I spent a lot of time on this toilet. I made actual individual tiles, I used caulking, I grouted it, I then textured it, weathered it, and sprayed up toilets and weathered those, made a basin, weathered that, did flooring, made taps, you name it, I went for it, and I think it looks really good. It's just a shame you don't see it in the video at all, aside from a few frames when it opens back and forth when it's crushing the one guy's head in. And there's my cat Turnip inspecting the sets. I don't think he really cares. I think he just wants to be fed or let out, one of the two. So now I'm making the exterior of the biker bar itself, the titular Pax Romana. I'm making some lettering out of EVF foam. It's just a material I had, and I probably did it because it meant I didn't have to paint it or anything like that. And then I used a thinner EVF foam underneath just to kind of outline it so it really stands out when it's glued on the actual building. The building itself is at 1/18th scale, and I just glued on a load of pots and tubing and food containers, just shapes that made it look a little bit interesting. And here I'm testing out the lettering on the building itself to make sure it looks okay and it fits. And then I seal at the edges with Mod Podge because spray paint, as it's aerosol based, will eat away at the actual foam if you don't seal it. But yeah, it's starting to come together, I think, and I sealed up some areas with tape so that when I peeled it off, the spray paint didn't get to it, so that the light would shine through it, just to get some more ambient lighting within the miniature itself. Now I have, I don't know, probably about 70 plus molehills in my back garden. It's a right nightmare. But the thing is with moles, they kick up nice dirt and it's usually clear of stones and things like that. And I just mix that in with some paint and it just kind of creates a nice kind of cement texture that is very evocative of like a biker bar. And then I start to weather around the text with some shoe polish, some black and brown, just to make it look a bit grimy and drippy. And then I also weathered some of the black areas with some silver paint, just dry brushed it on. And there's the doors that open back and forth, which again, I don't utilise in the video whatsoever. And I also stuck on some decals, and it just really makes the miniature pop. And I forgot to mention the reason why this is in 1/18th scale and not any other scale in particular is because all the vehicles that I've bought are also in around the 1/18th scale. And I want them all to work together because when T-Bone arrives, I want to have all the bikes and the cars within the same shot as the building. And it's just a lot less work for me. I don't have to composite things and do all that. I can just do it all in one shot, or so I thought anyway. And there's a look at some of my janky wiring inside. But yeah, I think this lighting really helps sell this set. Kind of makes it feel like it's a proper lived-in biker bar. And especially that light beaming up on the Pax Romana font on the front of the building. So speaking of the vehicles, it was really hard to get 1/18 scale motorbikes, and so I ended up just getting a mismatch of stuff that I could find, so be it from Sonic 3, Paw Patrol, or this weird one that I found from Asda that makes music. I also bought a 1/18 scale Batmobile from the new film The Batman, and yeah, I just sprayed them all up black and painted them with the same dirt and paint concoction that I painted on the actual building. So this Batmobile itself, I'm going to put a few little extra details on it so it doesn't just look like a Batmobile. I'm going to get a few Yakult pots and pen lids and things like that just to kind of glue onto it so it doesn't look completely like a Batmobile. I mean, it still looks like a Batmobile, but a little bit less. This is probably the best spray painting job I've ever done. Normally, whenever I paint stuff with spray paint, it ends up gloopy and pretty bad, but you know what, I actually did a pretty good job on these, which is ironic because I end up completely destroying these and covering them in crud. I mean, look how clean that looks, not for long. And there's the finished Batmobile, I mean T-Bone Laser Blastmobile, all covered in dirt and decals. And I was so thrilled with that. That skull on the front actually is from the bike that T-Bone rides in the Tally-Ho video. So it's a nice little carry-on from there. And here's a look at all the bikes all painted and weathered up. I think they look pretty cool, you know. And you can even see the paws still from the Paw Patrol vehicle there. But yeah. So normally I get all my armatures from Animation Supplies. They're my favourite armatures and I've been using them for about 15 years and I've never had a problem with a single one that I own. The problem being is they're quite expensive. You're looking at around £125 to £150 for the pro ones. And for this video I need a lot more characters than I have armatures. And I just haven't got the budget to pay Animation Supplies prices. So I was looking around on the internet and I found these ones on AliExpress for under £30. And I've never bought anything from AliExpress before, so I took a punt and bought 4 of them. And you know what? They were pretty easy to put together. And within a couple of hours I had around 4 armatures that, you know, did the job. I don't use them as a main character, I just put them in backgrounds, just sipping on drinks here and there. But for the fraction of the price of an Animation Supplies armature, and I get 4 of them, they're well worth the money. So now it's time to make T-Bone McLaser Blast. Here is the original character design I did over 5 years ago, and the original stop motion puppet from the Tally-Ho video. But the way I do stop motion characters now is very different to how I did it back then. Before, they were like solid plasticine. Now I use soft goods and wadding to pad out my characters. It just makes them a lot more easy to animate and they're a bit lighter and things like that. I had to remake his waistcoat. I actually found the original one from Putebox or Tally-Ho, made a template of it and then cut it out of leatherette and made a fresh brand spanking new one. He looks all dapper there. And then I made a bunch of belt buckles and knee pads out of Fimo. So while he does look a little bit different, hopefully he still is the same T-Bone McLaser Blast you remember from those older videos, just a little different. Like having that padded belly just means that I can animate it jiggling up and down now, as opposed to when it was just solid plasticine and I couldn't really do anything with it. Now I'm making the Duck Mobster's Bug Henchman, and I always do this, try to make characters with 4 arms and kind of jerry-rig my armatures so they can kind of have 4 arms instead of 2. And I managed to get 2 boiler suits, cut the arms off one and kind of hodgepodge it together. Then using the same Buzz Lightyear toy set that I used in the Pillhouse video, I fashioned him a spacesuit. Had to cut it all around so it could fit the 2 arms, but yeah, I think it looks pretty good. I also made him some wings that could be animated out of some wire, this plastic neon material I had, and some hot glue for the detail. And here he is all finished. I think he looks pretty awesome, to be honest, especially once his costume is all painted up and you've added all those holsters and guns. And that was really rewarding animating that when he pulls them all out, because I didn't think it would actually work. I thought it was just going to be a nightmare, but it turned out pretty cool in the actual video. So for the henchwoman, I wanted to do something a bit more sleek, a bit kind of like Black Widow or Emma Frost from the Avengers. Well, they're both in the Avengers, just different kind of Avengers. But I wanted to do something like a black cat suit with all kinds of buckles and straps on it. And I found these 2 miniature costumes on AliExpress and I kind of hodgepodged them together. And I think it looks really cool. And I just stuffed the costume with all wadding just to kind of make it a bit shapely, give it some hips and a bum and some breasts and things like that. And I think it looked really cool in the end. And for the mob boss, I found this awesome 3-piece suit on AliExpress. You can get it in various colours, but I thought purple would be quite striking. And I loved doing the duck in the previous video, so I thought, let's make him a duck, a mob boss duck, for whatever reason. Sometimes when getting these miniature costume pieces, they're not exactly how they're described. Like these denim jackets looked a hell of a lot darker on the images online. So I had to dye them, and I probably rushed this a little bit. I probably should have just left them overnight, but me being me, I kind of rushed through it and just kind of plonked them in there for a bit and then pulled them out when they probably weren't ready. So they probably weren't as dark as they could be. But they're okay. Here it is wet, it's quite dark, but when it dries up a bit, it comes a bit light. And then I cut the arms off and pad them out with t-shirts and hoodies. I really wish I made a Pax Romana patch to stick on the back of these though. That would have been a nice final touch, but you only have so much time on these things. So I actually made loads more characters than I'm showing right here. You'll see some more when we get into the production side of the behind the scenes. But I had a blast making these dancers, and I thought it'd be fun to have kind of like a devil-esque dancer with some devil horns and a tail and things like that. And because the video is not camp enough already, I thought it'd be fun to have a robot dancer with rocket breasts. So now that everything's been made more or less, it's time to start the animation. So I start off with the very first shot of the video, the actual title screen. And it's a simple shot of panning down from the sky to reveal the Pax Romana nightclub. Problem is, I've only got 3 bikes and I want to make it look like there's more bikes at the biker bar. So I have to do 2 passes where the bikes are on either side and combine it together. And because I make very cinematic music videos, I like to have a title screen for the Psychedelic Porn Crumpets logo. And it means I have to come up with a new one for every video. And for this one, I went for a kind of a biker text. And what I wanted was for the lettering to appear out of the black. So what it meant was that every frame I had to kind of smudge the lettering until it became a big black gloop. But then when played backwards, it reveals the lettering. Then you take that into After Effects and you clean up some of the green screen, remove the actual green screen and add a bit of an outline. And now it's time to make the background for the shot, and I like to keep everything so it's all plasticine, so it's a plasticine background with gradients and plasticine clouds and planets. And then you add some foliage and some more colour grading just to kind of, you know, make sure that the composition looks pretty nice. Then you add the building of the Pax Romana, then the Psychedelic Porn Crumpets text, and utilising motion tracking, you can kind of blend it all together so it's all one seamless shot of the logo appearing and then the building down below. I love animating the vehicles, so much so that I did this little test animation before I started to actually do any of the main shots in the music video. And I just did this by having 3 different boosters that I'd rotate around and animating some pieces of wadding for the dust trails, whatever you want to call it. And I'd shot this on my phone, so it just goes to show that you don't need the best equipment to produce something that looks fun. And I didn't have the time to make a little T-bone, so I just got the Batman figure that came with the toy and just covered him in a bit of blue plasticine, and I think it works fine. And here are the boosters that I made that you just kind of rotate around, the rockets on the back of the car. So here I'm just working out the motion of the vehicle in relation to the bikes because the boosters kept clipping the motorbikes and I had to figure out how much space to leave because if I have to keep picking up the bikes in the shots, they're just going to kind of wiggle around all the time. And you don't want that. That's just an absolute nightmare. So you want to leave enough space for the car to go around and for the bikes not to get hit. And again, just using some wadding to emulate the dust trail coming from the car as it's braking. And then I also use a bit of plasticine to tilt the car up and down to simulate like a rocking motion after it's stopped. Now I have to do 2 passes of this shot because, again, like the intro sequence, I only have 3 bikes, so I have to do 1 shot with the car coming in, another shot with just the bikes on its own on the other side, and then using After Effects I have to mask around the car and then the other bikes and combine the two shots together, which is a bit of a pain in the ass. It only takes a couple of minutes to do one frame, but when you have to do 3 seconds worth of it, it takes up almost a day just to kind of perfect it. And because I did this shot using my motion control slider, that adds an extra level of difficulty, because had I had it locked off and just a flat shot, it'd probably been easier to do. But I don't like to make life easy for myself. You can tell this is one of my very first shots of the video because of the intricacy of the little ear wiggle. And it's sometimes those little intricacies that get lost towards the end of a production because you're so busy just trying to churn through shots, you haven't really got the time to kind of do little intricate movements like that. And as you can see, these are all the different doors that I have that create the motion of the sliding doors, and you just keep replacing them every frame with a different set of doors.
Look at this. I need to find the charging cable for my electric razor. But yeah, anyway, it's day 2 of animating. I have 3 weeks left to go to do, I don't know, over 4 minutes of animation. I'm a silly boy. And speaking of being silly boys, I've done a massive whoopsie and I've completely deleted one of my shots. I don't know how it's happened or where it's gone. I've looked everywhere. I've used a Wayback Machine. I have used disk recovery services, and I just cannot find it anywhere. It's an absolute nightmare. I mean, it's not a particularly hard shot. As you can see here, this is what I filmed the other day just for prosperity on my phone. But yeah, it's not a hard shot. But since doing the shot, I have completely destroyed the puppet, and the set's now a little bit worse for wear. So not only do I have to rebuild a puppet, I also have to fix up the set. So yeah, happy days.
And there's the fixed up henchman. And as you can see, I had to destroy part of my set to do another shot. And that meant I had to kind of hide that within the shot and create this like foreground element. But it was all a wasted endeavour because I didn't even use this shot in the final video, so what a complete waste of time. And now we're on to the office sequence, which is probably one of my favourite sequences to animate on the video actually. And here's just a look at some of the items around the room. And there's my shot list. I think there's around 36 shots for this 1 minute long sequence, so quite a lot to do. And in not a lot of time. I think I spent a week on this sequence. And to save time in post-production, I just glue my characters down so I don't have to spend a long time removing rigging. And here's the final shot, the final reveal of the mob boss and his henchman. And just crossing off that first shot, it's always a relief when you start crossing those shots off. And doing this shot with the guns coming out of the holsters was really satisfying because it was nice that those 3D printed holsters and guns worked really well together. And now we're on to the reverse shots with T-Bone and making sure that everything's glued down so my stupid fat fingers don't knock things out of the way while I'm animating them. And I really tried with the lighting in this shot, and while this is a simple shot, I was really pleased with how it looked. And here's his dick gun, as it's now come to be known. It's not meant to be a dick gun, it's meant to be a concealed weapon in his back, and it just so happens to come out from the crotch. And there's the replacement muzzle flash, which is just a piece of plasticine that I blast a lamp on it for a couple of frames. Now this is my favourite part, where I get to do the carnage, where I get to do the heads exploding from a gunshot. Just slapping that blood on the characters' heads and on the wall and just everywhere. Yeah, it's always a lot of fun doing this, having eyeballs popping out, things like that. Speaking of eyeballs, there's the duck's eyeball right there. I just love playing with slime and blood and guts. It's always fun. And this is probably one of my favourite shots I did in the video. Again, much like the ear flaps, just doing shots like that where you can really spend a lot of time on just little gestures like that are always quite rewarding. And there we go, crossing off the final shot on the list, and the scene is done. And to save time on walk cycles, I just glue the characters down on a lazy Suze and then just move the arms left to right. And then in post-production, you add them going up and down. So now we're on to the prison sequence, and I'm never quite finished with my pre-production stuff. So even when I get onto a new scene, I'm still finishing off sets and characters. And here are all the multiple doors that I made for the prison cell. It's a very simple set with a prison door, some lights and some little power generators to the side, which I had a little bit of animation in post-production. And then the first shot I did was just a simple pullback from the prison door. And here is the prison guard, and the design of him was suggested by my good friend Mr. Dan Plastic. He was like, why don't you make a slug guy, alien type thing? So here you are, Dan, this one's for you. And then this is Anne from the Fronzoli album cover. I thought back then when I made a claymation character for some promo material that she'd make a great kind of cigarette smoking man or cigar smoking woman for a future music video, so there she is. So for Anne's reveal in the video, I wanted to do a very specific kind of look to it. And if you notice, there's a green light behind the guard there. And I really wanted this green to be quite punchy in the shot, but the way I'd lit it previously, it wasn't, doing much for me. So I had to do kind of 2 different passes of the shot with different kind of levels of exposure for the green light. But because I did the shot on the motion control slider, it was a bit of a headache to do, so it meant I'd have to take a picture, change the lighting, take a picture again, then delete those 2 frames, and so on and so on. It became a bit of a nightmare, and then I'd have to then find those deleted shots and then compose the shot again together, and then eventually I stitched the 2 shots together, and then using some blending options, this is the final shot that we get. I hope that makes sense. And here's T-Bone in his prison garb, and I thought it'd be fun to kind of make him look a bit like Robert Redford from that Jeremiah Johnson meme, where he's kind of got a long hair and long beard and looking a little bit dishevelled. I made a little bed, nothing much to say about that. And again, just a very simple set for his prison cell, just a lot of cross hatchings on the wall to kind of show how long he's been in there. And I just used the toilet from the toilet set that I made for the bar, and yeah, made like a little set of weights for him to use. And there's T-Bone and Anne meeting for the first time. The poster in the background there is actually from the van from Tally Ho, so a little carry on from there as well. And then this little monster here is actually like a continuation from the previous video, so if you haven't seen Pillhouse Pop and Moonshine, check that out. But basically a monster is created in that video and it becomes this giant gelatinous eyeball planet. And I'm guessing T-Bone is somehow tasked with taking down this giant planet. And as you can see, T-Bone here has got a black eye and a bit of blood on him, and that was from the original ending where it's going to be more of a bar brawl and he's going to be more involved in a fight, so a bit of a continuity error there, but oh well, no one's noticed. So now we're in the final stretch of the video. We're finally at the bar scenes, and to set up this scenario that you're watching right now took me 3 hours. And this is what kind of scared me off from my original ending of the bar scenes, where it was going to be multiple bar fights. And that's because I'd have had to reset this scene up in all the different angles multiple times to make sure I kept the continuity. And it would have been an absolute nightmare. So just one night I re-storyboarded the whole ending and just simplified it. So it meant I only had to do 4 setups for the entire ending. So yeah, for the ending, I did the best I could with the time I had. People watching at home probably won't notice any difference or won't even matter to them, but I care. But above all else, I am so chuffed with how this set looks. I think it's one of the best sets I've ever made. So as you can see, I used a syringe to suck up some tea to use as beer in the pint glasses. And I just did a few drops each time and just took a picture, and gradually it looked like the beer tap was filling up the beer. And I also used some mousse for the froth on the beer, which worked an absolute treat. However, for whatever reason, someone out there could probably let me know, but my 3D printed pint glasses would crack with the tea inside of it, and I'd be halfway through a shot and all of a sudden it would just crack and just tea would be everywhere, so I'd have to kind of clean it up and make sure that it didn't ruin the shot. Anyway, here I am animating the dog character lapping up his beer from his bowl. Originally this dog was going to be a bit more integral into the bar fight as I originally intended for the video, but it kind of got nixed because of time, unfortunately. And just to look at the behind the scenes of the bar fight itself here, this is where you kind of realise why I did the prison sequence and the office sequence first. It's because I needed as many characters for the bar scene as possible, so I needed to get those scenes done first so I could repurpose all those characters for the bar scene. And for whatever reason, I'm always destroying everything I make. I don't know what it is about me, but I destroy everything, like this bar. I was so pleased with this bar, and then I just destroyed it in the video. Covered it in blood and ripped it all up. And here is the aftermath of the guy who got his head caved in the toilet door. So drum kits are super daunting to make because there's so much detail on them, but I decided to make like a kind of a futuristic electronic looking one with some lights in it, and it only took me a couple of hours and I'm super pleased with it. This is based on a real synth guitar called the Synthax. There was less than 100 made and it cost about 10 grand when it first came out. But mine's just made out of FIMO. And here I am setting up the stage for the band. And here's the band that I made. They're all made out of tinfoil covered in plasticine, and they're all based on characters from the Fronzoli inlay that I did for the Psychedelic Porn Crumpets a couple of years ago. And I just wanted a band that were kind of like the Cantina band or the Max Rebo band from Star Wars. And so yeah, this is my little homage to that, but just in my own style. And here I am setting up the band with their instruments. And I'm just gluing everything down so nothing kind of shifts around while I'm animating it, because otherwise it would just be an absolute nightmare. So those speakers and cabs are actually from my Seven Dust video. Normally I like to make everything from scratch and fresh for a music video, but sometimes when you've got a tight deadline and you've already got stuff that's made that will do the job for what you need it to do, then sometimes it's alright to reuse a few things here and there. And while they're not the most articulated characters ever, their hands can be in positions, their legs can be moved, and I can move their heads around and their tongues and things like that. So there's enough movement for the band when they're rocking out. And now I'm just setting up the other end of the bar with the dancers and the band and some punters. And to save myself time with my motion control slider, sometimes I just move the camera manually using the handle on the tripod. So that's all I did for this shot. So I'm just planning out the movement of the shot before I start to animate all the characters. And because there's a lot of characters in this shot, I just kept the movement to kind of a minimum. So everyone just kind of is just lifting up drinks or smoking or spinning around on the podiums, just to kind of keep it simple, but there's enough movement to make it look like there's an atmosphere, there's something going on within the pub. So for the dancers, I just kept it fairly simple and just had them spinning on their podiums with a little bit of a head movement, just to kind of make sure that it's a little bit alive. So for whatever reason, this shot took me several attempts to kind of get it to a point where I was happy with it. Each version has something that I prefer over the other one. So for example, I like the hair movement in the one take, whereas I prefer the tail movement in the other, or the movement of the hands in another. If I could combine all three, I'd have had a perfect take, but I went for the third take in the end. And here I'm just animating T-Bone landing on the floor after being hit with the bar stool. I love animating the eyebrows, the eyelids, the mustache, the mouth, little bits of hair flicks, just anything to kind of make him feel alive and as if he's a real person.
So it's the final night of getting the video done, and in typical fashion, I am running massively behind, and the video is actually coming out tomorrow. It's not even like it's just a deadline, it's coming out in a couple of weeks or a month's time. It's actually out tomorrow. I have no idea what time. I have got several shots, when I say several, probably about 10 shots still to do, and it's about, what, 10:30 at night now, so I don't think I'm going to be getting any sleep. As you can see here, these pink ones are the shots that I have not yet done, and I'm doing like right this second.
So it's not ideal to be in this position, but sometimes it is what it is, and yeah, what you're looking at right now are rocket boobs. I'm sorry, not sorry. I just thought it was fun. And I'm not entirely happy that all this bit got rushed towards the end. But I think if I had a little more time, this could have been something a little bit more special. But like I said, I did the best I could with the time that I had. I ended up using a whole can of shaving foam in this sequence, and when she explodes I completely covered that area of the set in shaving foam, and it meant that I had to get all the shots with the shaving foam in the background done as quick as I possibly could, because eventually it would just evaporate into nothing.
My office smells of shaving foam really quite badly. I'm not sure if that's a good or bad thing.
So now we're into the very final shots of the video, and I was working into the very early hours, just trying to churn through the shots as quick as I could to make sure I got it ready in time for the deadline. And so yeah, some of these shots were a little bit rushed, and like I said before, I just did my best that I could with the time that I had. And yeah, it was very late, or very early, by the time I'd finished.
So I finally finished the video through the skin of my teeth. I think for the last week I was on about 3 to 4 hours sleep a night. The last couple of days I was awake for about nearly 40 hours plus. I was awake from 7 AM on the Wednesday, I think, all the way through to 2 AM on the Friday. I did about 30 plus seconds of animation and some compositing and editing. Yeah, not good. But as I said, I finally got it done. Since then, I went to Brighton to visit some friends and have a bit of downtime, go to the pier, play some games, have some nice food. So I feel a little bit rested. But as you can see, my office is an absolute tip. If you'd seen my video from last year, you'd seen that I'd completely tidied up my office and it's now an absolute state. So without further ado, let the cleaning commence.
So making a video like this is very chaotic, and for someone like me, I find it very hard to stay tidy and organised. So it's why my environment ends up looking like this. It's kind of like my mind is like this as well, just a complete mess. But I generally look forward to the tidying up part of the video because it's very rewarding and it's nice to get back to a sense of normality.
So what was originally intended to be one of my most simple videos ended up being one of my most complex videos. Typical me, right? And while I had a lot of fun making this video, I'm not going to lie, it was super stressful. I had around 8 to 9 weeks to get it done around Christmas time, so not ideal. And yeah, it was very hard, not going to lie. And in full disclosure, I missed the deadline by about a day or so. So to the band's manager Murray and the rest of the band, I am sorry it was a little bit late, I apologise. But I hope you enjoyed it. And it seemed like other people enjoyed it. It's had very good comments on YouTube, and in Australia they have a show called Rage on the channel ABC. ABC I think is like the equivalent to the BBC here in the UK, and Rage just shows music videos, and a couple of weeks ago we were the featured video, so that is super awesome. And not only that, we've had a few reaction videos. They're always fun to watch, just seeing people experience the video for the first time and seeing what their reaction is. I get a kick out of watching those. So I'm super pleased with how the video turned out for the most part. The first half I think is really good, like setting the scene in the bar and then the scene in the office. I'm super happy with how that turned out. And then the prison sequence, I'm really happy with how that all turned out. Just that little bit in the middle, that middle section, if I just had an extra week, it could have been so much better. But that's how these things go, and that's down to me at the end of the day. That's my poor time management, to be honest. It's not on anyone else, it's all on me. And I'm not fishing for compliments at all when I say this, but I think sometimes when you're an artist, and I hate saying that word, it sounds super pretentious, but when you're an artist and you have a vision for something, it doesn't matter how successful it is, how many views it gets, how many awards it gets, things like that will always niggle in your back of your mind that, oh, I could have done that better. But at the end of the day, people seem to enjoy the video and it doesn't seem to matter to them, so who am I to argue? And speaking of awards, while I was making the video, I was actually nominated for my previous video, Pillhouse Proper Moonshine, for Best Music Video at the South by Southwest Film Awards. And lo and behold, I actually won. Like, mind blown. I literally have no words other than to say thank you to anyone who voted for it or was involved in any way, shape or form in me winning that award. I can't thank you enough. So yeah, thank you. And because I wasn't present at the award show, it was in Australia and I was making this video, I'm just going to take this little opportunity to thank my wife for being super supportive, my family, my mom and my dad. My office is in my parents' house and I work within their house, so they have to deal with all the commotion that surrounds my music videos, so massive thanks to them. And obviously massive thanks to the Psychedelic Porn Crumpets themselves and their manager Murray for always trusting in me to kind of just go off on my flights of fancy and make silly music videos for them. So yeah, thank you very much. But yeah, if you've got this far in the video, I really appreciate it. I make these videos also for me, so that when I'm old and decrepit and I'm looking back at the silly things that I used to make when I was younger, I can be like, oh, I made that. Yeah, anyway, if you are inclined to do so, please hit the like button. I'd really appreciate it. If you don't already, please hit the subscribe button as well, because even though I'm not the most fruitful of delivering content on YouTube, I have got some cool videos coming up in the pipeline. I think the Big Bot Bash is coming up in a couple of months' time, so that's going to be super awesome. I'm really looking forward to that. And yeah, if you want to hit me up on social media, I'm on Facebook and Instagram. And yeah, and until next time, take care and goodbye.